Hi, everyone. This is Shawn Parikh. This is our WTF podcast. And today we have with us a very special guest. He is also a friend. He has come to India and has spent 2 days with us. We have spent good time together. We met. I would like to share this before we start this. I met him
Sure.
in Toronto, and I just went up to him when he was taking his session, and cut to we are meeting in India directly. So it was a great coincidence. Since then, we have developed a great rapport in professional relationship and personal relationship. So we have with us Apoorv Dwivedi. Apoorv, welcome. Apoorva is a marketing and a growth advisor, exclusively working with CPA and accounting firms, and we have recommended him to many of our clients, and he has been helping them, and very instrumental in, I would say, changing the thought process for CPA and accounting firm in terms of how to approach growth, how to approach business development, how to approach marketing. So he has prior experience of working with PwC and MNP in Canada. So he's based out of Canada. So Apurva, welcome and great to connect with you. Thank you for taking the time out. Why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, absolutely my pleasure, Sean. Always great to have a conversation with you. You touched on some of our relationship that we've had over the last while. And, I gotta say, I've been seeing you and your team actively engaged at a whole bunch of industry events and conferences. And one, it's great to see the thought leadership that's coming out of your team and the leadership in the direction that you're kind of driving there. But also kind of great to see the progress that you've made. And you touched on the fact that I actually went to India and I had a chance to meet with a whole bunch of firms there. And I was very, very impressed by your folks. And I mean, I really only got to see the two offices, but I know you have a very large presence across the country, but it's exceptionally well run, very professional, very secure. And, I think a lot of that comes back to you and your knowledge and expertise in the space as well.
And I think you went to Lucknow and Ahmedabad, and when you came in, we also had a Jalsa event. So there was a
Yeah.
whole gathering as well in Ahmedabad. So you
Yeah.
got a chance to see that as well. Uh, Apurva, while I know you personally, but why don't you kind of take like 2 minutes before we kind of kickstart everything for our viewers to let us share a little bit about, what you do, how you help,
Sure.
and yeah.
Sure. So you touched on it a little bit in the introduction. So, my background is 25 plus years of marketing, business development, communications in the financial services and specifically within the accounting and consulting space. I worked at and led large teams at two of the big four in Canada. And since then, I went out onto my own and established my own firm, Fixyr Marketing. So it's Fixyr marketing, and our website is just fixyr.com. And what we do now is, like you said, we work exclusively with CPA, accounting, and business advisory firms. But if you take a look at those firms, a lot of those firms really struggle with marketing and growth. It's like a black box for them. They put money into it. They're not really sure what they should be doing, and they're not sure what they're going to get out of it. So we come in and we help them to. So, what do you actually need to do based on what your growth objectives are? There's no one size fits all solution for everyone. There's all these gurus, so called, that are out there that are trying to sell you something. And, the truth is what you may need might be different than, what another firm down the street might need based on what you're trying to achieve. So we come in, we do that, we help firms to figure that out.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Let's now directly jump into the discussion. Our
Sure.
viewers be
Yeah.
excited to know about that. So first of all, you and me both work with accountants day in, day out. One question comes in, and this is a very, very clear comment that I've seen from every mid-sized small accounting firm that, we don't market. We are just getting clients word of mouth.
Yeah.
You know, how do you practically answer that question? Because this is the mindset that we don't really market. We are just getting referrals. We're just getting word of mouth. We don't need to market. We don't need to look out for growth.
Yeah. So, great question. And it's something that I get all the time, every day as well, right? So, when I talk about marketing, I just want to be clear for your listeners out there in the audience. I define marketing as everything that a firm does in order to generate revenue opportunities, right? So, think of everything that falls under that umbrella. Um, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that can potentially, meet that criteria to be under that. Um, Referrals, absolutely, right? Most accounting firms, most CPAs, when I go out there and I talk with folks, I say, how do you generate business? Probably 95% of them at least will say it's through referrals and word of mouth. However, then I ask a follow-up question, which is, how many of you have a referral strategy?
Yep.
And usually it's less than about 1 in 10 or 1 in 20 that say, yeah, they actually have a methodical way of doing that. And so what the challenge becomes is people kind of leave it to chance and it becomes very ad hoc. And so when you have a heavy reliance, um, it creates an incredible amount of risk for your firm because it's unpredictable. You don't know when referrals are going to come in. You don't know who they're going to come from. You don't know the quality of them. So, there's that question around, do you have an articulated referral strategy or not? But then the second part of that is also, are you growing with the types of clients and services that you want to grow with in the future? And that usually, there's generally maybe less than half of the audience that says they're okay with that. Usually the numbers are somewhere between about 60 to 70% that say no, they're not. So yes, they are growing through referrals and they've gotten to where they are through referrals, but they don't have a strategy for it. And the types of referrals that they're getting are not the quality of clients or the type of work that they necessarily want to be doing.
Yeah, yeah. And one thing when people think about marketing and growth and business development does not mean putting content on social media only. They often
Sure.
construe it this way. An active referral strategy is an important part of your growth marketing, whether it is giving a discount on your existing invoice or active referral fees or some kind of community system,
Yeah.
building around of existing client who in turn, create that impact of, expanding the relationship even beyond the community. All of these are active strategies, and he's correctly pointed out. I also always say that how do you get referrals? And these people just call and refer us. I said that's not referral. I would say that's an inbound inquiry coming in through. Referral is basically when you have a strategy in place, when you reach out to client asking, and one funny explanation here is uh, people who often don't invite reviews from the client. The first time they actually invite a review is then when they first get a negative review.
Yeah,
To
exactly.
offset that negative reputation, they start actively inviting positive reviews. You
Yeah.
know, yeah,
Yeah.
sorry.
So, and that's funny you say about the reviews because that's something that we see all the time. There's a lot of people in industry that are scared of reviews. They're not sure what people are going to say about them, right? Like, let's be honest, a lot of times people aren't always happy with the relationship that they have with their accountant, right?
Yes.
And that could be for a whole bunch of different reasons. And so they're afraid to go out there and they're afraid to ask for reviews until maybe they see something come in. Then they start to panic and they're like, okay, we need to come up with other reviews to counter this. But here's the thing with that, right? Is reviews, testimonials, client case studies are amongst the most powerful things that you can do to increase the quality of the leads that you get and build trust with potential leads and even with referral sources. Having evidence of your excellence and the type of work that you do is one of the most important things you can put out there. And the reason why is people aren't really sure what to believe. They go out there and they see and hear all sorts of things being said by folks. That's great. That might grab their attention, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to trust you. In order to build that trust, they want to hear, okay, here's what other people are saying about you. And that's where the power of referrals comes in as well, right? To circle back to that is, a quality referral is coming from someone that knows you, knows the value that you provide, and they believe that you can provide that value to their contact. And so they're going to make that referral because it makes them look good as well, right? They're providing value to that contact by putting the customer in touch with someone that can help solve their problems.
And that's very beautifully kept. Sometimes this question comes in that what is going to. So one aspect you touched about being scared of reviews,
Yeah,
right? First, the philosophy is being an accountant, you're trained to be conservative,
sure.
right? So from that mindset, you always think negative first before positive, you
Yeah,
know. And I'm not saying this is a general mindset, but I'm just saying that you are trained to kind of think in that way. And that's where you think that, somebody, people often, if you invite, put positive reviews for your service, unless you have something really going wrong, you know.
yeah,
And if that is happening, you need to fix that first. And reviews should not be the way to get this message from the client, which means you have some deeper gap in terms of you and client connect or something like that. So open review system is important. Yes, you will end up getting two negative reviews. In a service business,
sure.
we, all of us, where client feels that they have not got the value they wanted. You try remain as transparent as you can. You try remain as competitive you can, and you try remain to deliver. You try to deliver as much as you can. In spite of that, if something happens, that would be if there is 1-2%. Even the end user is also, you know, mature enough to understand that they are not expecting if you have 200 reviews, all 200 of them would be 5-star. They
Yeah,
also, yeah,
and in fact, in that case, I was talking about trust. If you saw that this firm has 1,000 reviews and all 1,000 reviews are 5-star, that's probably a red flag in your head, right? You're probably going,
yeah,
okay, maybe there's something actually wrong here, right? We're like, what's going on? So you said something else that I want to bring up, which is transparency. Transparency is incredibly important in the lead generation process and the lead nurture process. People want to know that the firm that they're dealing with acknowledges that they're not 100% okay, right? If everything looks great, yeah, there's that level of mistrust that maybe they're sugarcoating the reality of what's there, right? And there's actually all sorts of data that backs this up, that the best rating that you can have online is not 5 stars on Google. It's actually somewhere between 4.7 to 4.9, right? Because people will see that, okay, I get that they're not always going to be 5-star. Maybe there's some 4 stars or 3 stars in there as well, right? And what are those folks saying? So yeah, it goes a long way in building trust and being transparent.
yeah, absolutely. And I always say this, while case studies and testimonials are always going to be good, case studies actually finds out, you know, what actually the success is measured in quantified terms. So people want to
Sure.
differentiate, and reviews online on platform are one of the most authentic one. I mean, if you have 100 out of 100 5-star, either you're an exceptional service provider or it's too good to be true,
Yeah, exactly.
either ones. But there is one thing I wanted to ask, with a lot of firms who out there are thinking, I have seen a lot of clients investing in 1 year, they'll be investing heavily into marketing, and
Hmm.
and next year they'll completely stop.
Yeah,
Yeah. And they might have invested, if they're doing 500,000 in revenue, they might have invested 100,000 in building website and promotions and ads and all of that. And second year, when they actually got nothing out of it, you know, they've actually, completely, stopped all marketing efforts.
yeah.
So, and while this behavior needs to be changed, and I want your thoughts on this. Second thing I want to highlight is they are also trying to quantify ROI in terms of lead gen,
Yep.
which is okay. But how do you answer these two things?
Sure. So the first thing I'd say is kind of the stop and start. So, we see that all the time with folks. And particularly what we see is they try something, they don't get results out of it, they stop it. And then someone else goes to a conference and they see something or they see an ad as they're scrolling through their Instagram. They're like, oh, we should try this other thing. They try this other thing, that doesn't work either, right? So you kind of get a lot of this stop and start. So one that usually comes down to a lack of a clear strategy on their part. So they don't have clarity in terms of how they want to actually promote and build their reputation and generate leads in the long term. And the second thing is usually they lack clarity around the measurement process. So, yeah, I mean, ultimately, perhaps you want to get to generating leads and the quality of leads and what it costs you to generate leads, but that takes time to get there. So the way to think about marketing is, marketing is almost like it's a necessary evil, like um, from a health perspective. And, I share this because I'm the type of person that goes up and down, 10, 15 pounds all the time. And, it's usually because I have a really poor diet, I admit it. And it's usually because I stopped working out. Now, if I stay in the routine of working out and eating healthy, I'm not going to see results tomorrow. I might see results, 90 days, 120 days down the road, or maybe even potentially even more. And once I see those results, if I stop, guess what's going to happen, right? I'm going to get into bad shape again. And so the thing to think about in terms of your marketing is it's a long-term play. There are things that you can do in the short term, but people need to get away from just kind of that short term. Keep the big picture, the long-term picture in view, right? It takes a long time to build your reputation. You have to sustain your reputation over time. A lot of the lead generation stuff, and this is important, like in the way that people buy accounting and consulting services, right? There's data out there, there's studies out there that suggest that it the purchasing cycle for accounting and consulting services is actually very long. And if you think about it from the perspective of a business or a corporation, they're looking at changing their accountants or their bookkeepers, their tax filers, whoever. Maybe they need to wait until their year end is completed, right? Or their tax filings are completed. Maybe they need to wait until they've made a change with their software and systems, right? Or maybe they need to wait for a change internally with some of their people or some gaps or something, right? So that buying process for accounting and advisory services can be really long. So if you're only present for a small window of that, people are going to forget about you. You're not going to stay top of mind with them, right? And so having that regular presence out there, having that regular kind of marketing going on, you'll see it's a kind of a slow ramp up and then it'll start to build and take off over time.
So three things that you mentioned about, in fact, five things I would say. So one is clear strategy that you have.
Yeah.
Second is clear measurement process you have. Third is you have to do it for longer term. So you have to be in for longer term. Fifth thing you mentioned about regularity, which is consistency, I would say. So you
Yeah.
do it consistently. And even if you do it small, when I say small, does not mean, I mean, even if you do a smaller efforts in terms of percentage, your investment may be 1% of your revenue, which is still significant amount.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So, or 2% of your revenue. But even if
Yep.
it happens consistently, the impact starts coming in. So, and second thing I would like to add to what you said, see, marketing and growth investments is not just for acquisition of new clients.
Mm-hmm.
It is also expansion of existing client, putting you in front of
Absolutely.
thought leaders. It is also for acquisition of talent,
Yep.
in
Absolutely.
marketplace, where staffing is becoming more and more challenging.
Yeah.
Acquisition of talent is, at the top of the, your challenges. Like, and for existing talent and potential talent to join in, we always tell our client you should have once a month an employee testimonial coming in. You should have
Yeah.
some activity that you are doing internally should be posted every quarter on social media. You should
Yeah.
have some values going out on social media, because if you don't have talent, how would you be able to cater clients? And this is very interesting situation. When I talk to clients, they say that I'm not taking any more clients because I don't have capacity. How am I going to serve this clients? And on the other hand, they are saying we are not doing anything to attract the talent as well. So marketing and growth investments are in a way multi-pronged strategy, so to say.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, there's a couple key things because they overlap with each other for sure, right? So attracting talent, there's a massive talent shortage in the industry. Everyone has seen the data around where we are today and what that forecast is going to look like over, the next 5 years, 10 years. And so we know that there's forecasted to be a significant gap in talent in the accounting space. It's getting more difficult for firms to compete to acquire talent. When people are out there and they're looking for potential jobs, guess what? They're looking online and they're looking at the firm's reputation, right? Who are this firm? What are they known for? What's it like to work there? So the better the job that you do with the reputation, um, the better the quantity and the quality of the applicants that you're going to start to receive. So that's number one thing. Number two, though, is the overlap, which is that your audience, your customers, and your potential customers also see that. They look at employee testimonials. They look at employee reviews, right? If people leaving reviews on LinkedIn, Indeed, and other places, people are looking at that, right? Everyone 24/7, one of the things now is you can just pull out your phone and search up a particular firm and see, okay, what are people saying? They're looking at customer testimonials and reviews. They're also looking at employee testimonials and reviews, right? Say, okay, maybe customers are saying great things, but if the employee reviews aren't great, I'm worried about who's doing my work. Like at the end of the day, accounting is not an anonymous that's taking place in the cloud. Even if you're a cloud-based firm, there's people doing the work, right? It's accountants are in the relationship business. It's about the people, it's about the professionals that they have delivering the work. And so it's very, very important. It's critically important that your audience sees that you have good quality people, your people are engaged, right? So yeah, it helps in a whole bunch of different ways, attracting new clients as well as the type of talent that you can attract. And I mean, I'll take it even a step further. We've worked with a number of firms that they ramped up their marketing, they worked on building their reputation and their brand. It also attracted more potential buyers or folks interested in merging with them, right? Because they started saying, hey, who is this firm? They're now a lot more visible, right? So now all of a sudden you're on the radar of, multiple folks that are out there. So yeah, there's kind of this that's you may do it for the sake of recruitment, or you may do it for the sake of customer acquisition, but it halos over everything else that you do.
And we believe that every professional in your firm is your marketeer.
Mm-hmm.
If they know how the firm messaging is out there.
Yeah,
If you're more present, they have more tools. Of course, they might not know marketing accounts, does not know sometimes.
sure.
So, but still, if they know what the communication and messaging is out there, it will be more easier for them to project their firm. So that is something that I always say, that being out there is always beneficial. But that leads me to one question, that how to measure them. Your second point was clear measurement. And
Yeah.
I have this view. My view is this, and again, and then I will allude, because we both work with accountant and digital marketing front. So my view here is, I don't want to be in a business where I have to measure my customer acquisition cost and track it. I do not want to be in that business. When I say, it does not mean I should not track it, but I don't want a dashboard in front of me where I am actively doing that.
Mm-hmm.
While I would be happy to know that I invested, $100,000 a year, and this year my growth is this, but I would like to be in business where I don't need to track this. This is not a dashboard. We are doing ton of marketing. We have 400 plus videos out there, 70,000 plus follow on LinkedIn. So we do a lot of outreach and marketing, but my lifetime value of customer is so high that I don't want to track those numbers, and we consistently invest and continue to grow. So,
Yeah.
do you think that analogy applies, or what do you think about when customer starts talking about as a percentage of revenue, our marketing spend is very negligible.
Yeah.
Uh, I always say it's
So
around. I
you
always say
don't
this.
need to. Sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
no, I always say this. It's in the rounding off. So my view is, while it is important, it's a critical number. We track it, but for this is my view. But what the question is, how do they measure?
So you touched on one thing which I think is really important, which shows the insight that you have into your own business, that a lot of CPA accounting firms and advisory firms don't know, which is their customer lifetime value. So if you have a sense of what your customer lifetime value is, so that is how much do you expect to generate off of the average new customer that you're bringing on board. Now, you have to put some definitions around it, you have to put some parameters around it, but if you know what your renewal rates are, you know what your average package size is, you know what your margins are on those packages, you can calculate out to say, okay, here's what we're making on average per new client that we're bringing on board. If you have a sense of what that customer lifetime value is, now you're in a position to say, what are we willing to invest in order to acquire that customer? And that is a critical factor. Again, you have that insight. I'm going to tell you, a lot of the firms that I talk to, in fact, most of the firms that I talk to don't measure that. They might have it in aggregate, but they don't measure it for new customers coming on board. And having that insight allows you to say, okay, what am I willing to invest to acquire new customers? But then the flip side of the equation is also, what can I do to improve that relationship? How can I increase retention rates? How can I increase the quality of our operations efficiency so that we're making higher margins on that service? What additional services and value can I provide to that customer that the customer will want to purchase from us that is going to increase that customer's lifetime value, right? So you start getting into this mindset of thinking about that customer lifetime value, right, which is critically important. Coming back to your point, though, of not always measuring that, again, I think, I take a look at your business and you've been hugely successful, right, at what you do. You found an absolute gap in the market, and you're able to address that with the firm that you've built. A lot of accounting and advisory firms don't have that insight again, right? So back to earlier in the conversation where we're just talking about kind of this splattered stop and start approach. So if they don't have that insight, they're not sure what they're willing to invest to acquire customers. And if they don't know what they're willing to invest, they don't know how to benchmark different types of campaigns or lead generation methods or reputation building activities because they don't know how to measure the value of it. So, one of the things that I usually recommend to most firms is that they start with measuring how many leads did you generate? And from that, you can start to break down what's my cost to generate a lead, um, or what's the volume of leads that we're getting, where are those leads coming from, how many of those leads are converting into whether it's proposals or into sales. Once you have the data, right, this is the thing that accountants are fantastic at. And once you have the data, they can analyze it, they can break it down, they can say, okay, now I know how I'm performing. Now I can break down the equation and say, okay, what can we do to actually improve the performance of this? In terms of kind of that ongoing marketing spend, you talked about it's a negligible percent. Again, it's going to vary based on the firm. A mature firm is going to be in a very different position than a new firm that's just starting out. A firm that's cloud-based is going to be in a very different position than a firm that has, physical presence
Okay.
in different markets, right? And however, that being said, usually industry benchmarks, the data out there is, it's somewhere between 1.5% to 3% of top line revenues is what firms are spending on marketing. The key thing is not, the overall budget. Sometimes, yeah, maybe they need to go beyond that based on what their growth objectives are. But the key thing is you can still grow very well within that spend level if you're smart about where and how you're spending it. And again, that comes down to understanding your strategy, understanding your performance, and being wise about what you're doing. A lot of times when we audit firms' marketing and kind of see, what have they been spending in the past, um, there's usually a lot of wasted spend that can come out of there. Now, maybe there's other stuff that they need to commit to, but often there's a lot of stuff that is just kind of being spent on. Why? Because other people are spending on it, right? So you don't need to necessarily spend a lot. You need to eliminate the wasted spend, and you need to focus on what is important and relevant and in line with your firm's goals and growth objectives.
But I have one question here again. So
Sure.
let's say take an example of firm doing $1 million in revenue.
Okay.
Okay. And they scouted out a budget of, let's say, $10,000 a year,
Okay.
invested in their marketing, right? Uh, uh, let's say we want to measure the effectiveness of the $10,000. Some of it is getting you hired an agency. There are some efforts being done, concerted by your office manager, a couple of staff members, inviting. You
Sure.
can't really, for a smaller firm between 1 to 5 million, 10 million in revenue, you don't have a dedicated staff or a part-time staff doing it. It's owner involved. Let's say a review needs to be done. They collaborate with the agency that they're hired with. They're paying them for website. They're paying them for managing social media. They're paying them for hosting a webinar or putting client testimonials out there. And then you go out and go to conferences and etc. You end up doing those activities. Wouldn't it be right to measure it in this way, that I invested $10,000? My growth has been $250,000 on an annual bucket, or 200,
Absolutely.
which is like 20% on my this. Although it's not absolutely measurable, some of this growth is coming from price revisions, some of this growth additional services to existing clients, some of it is new clients. And because marketing impacts all three areas.
Yeah.
So yeah, from that perspective, do you think the measurement duration is also important rather than the metrics itself? Because as you said, it's a longer term activity. It's not going to happen. You mentioned to one more thing, that it's going to help you with mergers as well. And
Yeah.
accounting business per se is not growing 15%, 20% year on year. And client may take time to switch. On an average, as per my data, and an average client remains with an accounting firm for 7.5 years. So it's a
Yeah.
very sticky business, repeatable business, and that's where private equities and all of them are investing in it. But yeah, coming back to you, do you think measurement has to have a specific longer term duration, and probably uh, uh, and a broader metric, rather than specific ROI driven, or specific metric? Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's a great question, and my response to that is, if you take a look at other shows that accounts are used to analyzing all the time, if you measure it at a single point in time, it only gives you so much insight. Yeah, maybe you can say, this ratio is at this level right now versus industry benchmarks. Is that good or bad? However, when you track that measurement over time, you're able to see the performance, and you're able to see how, when we do this other thing over here, how does it impact their performance there? So I think that's a really critical thing, because that is really what gives you the insight around your performance. Is, yeah, again, you can kind of do that one point in time measurement, but if you track that measurement over time, you can really see what the delta is, what's changing it. It gives you insight into how much has it changed, what were the reasons behind the change, right? You have to understand that, you have to analyze that. So that's kind of really the core, I think, of the measurement around the marketing.
And one more thing, coming to my mind is there something called maintenance marketing, which is something that you continue to do and you continue to grow? You don't really have to measure those marketing. It's like, if you're running a large factory, there is maintenance capex you have
Yeah.
to, whether you expand or not, you have to continue maintaining that factory. So is there a concept like that?
Absolutely. So, again, it's going to depend on the firm. It's going to depend on the stage of growth that they're in, right? So, a firm that is very mature, they have a full book of business, right? Their growth has kind of flatlined. Perhaps they're not really looking at increasing growth. They're happy with the partner group that they have. They're not looking at adding more partners. They're basically at capacity. So, someone like that might say, okay, why do we need to continue to spend on marketing? Perhaps you can reduce the marketing spend, but um, again, it will come. There will be a level of churn, right? You mentioned your data that kind of suggests that there's a 7.5 year average lifetime per accounting client. If that's the case, you're going to have that level of churn. And so you're going to need to replace that churn. So even to maintain the level that you're at, you're going to have some level of in-market presence and reputation. You're going to have some level of relationships with strategic partners and other folks out there in the industry that can send you referrals. You're going to have something that can replenish that churn that you're seeing, right?
Absolutely.
And maybe it doesn't need to be a lot, but you need to have something there. And come back to our earlier conversation, our point that it's not an on and off thing, right? And I think that's a really difficult thing for a lot of folks to get their head around is, oh, we'll turn it off right now, and then when I need it, I'll just turn it on again.
And I mean, just a
And
simple thing,
unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. Yeah,
and just a simple thing, if somebody's applying you to hire and you don't have a website or you don't have a social media or you don't have a LinkedIn,
yeah,
they will it will be a big it will turn them off, you know
absolutely. Yeah,
even with existing clients, if you want more value, you need to be out there projecting your value. So I always say that projection of value is also equally important apart from delivering the value.
yeah,
So so even if you're not looking for growth, and as you said, it's to stay, even if you're to stay in the right health of the business, so to say, a maintenance marketing can spend and consistently doing that would be something that uh, for new client is first a validation, according to me.
sure.
Marketing is first for validation in accounting world, and then for lead generation.
Yeah,
First for reinforcing your brand, your value, your existing expertise, and then probably for lead gen. So
yeah,
from that perspective, now coming back to this, people think growth in marketing is limited to digital marketing and all of that. But let's say I have seen accountants going to these conferences, hanging out with other accountants, which I think is great because
yeah.
you get to know, what others are doing, learning from others' mistakes, and learning from others' best practices. But in my life, what I have learned is hanging out with people who are not around your average adds more value to you, gives more
Absolutely.
dimensions to your thinking. So
Yeah,
I have learned most. I'm an accountant as well, qualified accountant. And I have my most learning has come from non-accountants. All my bosses have been non-accountant. People that I hang out with, it's especially two of my good friend circle I have built over a period of last 10 years have been non-accountant. So my personal experience is, while I go to accounting conferences from business perspective for sure, and as you mentioned earlier that we are out there, but what do you say? What is your thought about it?
yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, hanging out with other accountants, that may kind of help you to understand what else is going on in the industry. What are other folks working on? What types of challenges do they have? It may help you to build out your network. There are some folks, particularly in the advisory space, that do get referrals from other accounting firms. So that's great too. But you do absolutely need to have your finger on the pulse of what else is going on out there. And it's very easily, particularly in today's world with the way digital media and social media and everything is working, it's very easy for people to get siloed in their thinking, right? They're only seeing and they're only exposed to a finite perspective. And so going outside of that circle is hugely important. Where I see it having a massive impact is when firms have clarity on who their audience is, going to the places where their audience is hanging out. So if you're trying to attract a particular type of client in an industry, go to those industry events and activities, right? See what's going on in that space. That might give you insight. That might give you ideas around, okay, what what is important that your customers are facing? How can you help them address that, right? Um, Beyond just kind of your month-to-month financial statements or year ends, what additional insight are you bringing based on your knowledge of their business and the environment that their business is operating in? So it's hugely important from that perspective. The other thing that you do is you get a kind of cross-pollination of ideas from different places. So whether it's about what's going on with your customers, or maybe there's other stuff that you're hearing and seeing that triggers something else that could impact your recruitment, or it could impact your tech stack and what you're using, or it could impact your operations or processes, or how you train and mentor your next generation of leaders and your succession plan, things like that, right? So, you can cross pollinate ideas from a variety of different places. It it doesn't have to just be other accountants, and strongly suggest that they actually expand well beyond other accountants as well. I totally agree with you there.
Quick question. What, according to you, should be the marketing budget? 1 to 3 million in revenue, 3 to 5, 5 to 7, 7 to 10.
So again, it's going to be based on the firm. It's going to be based on what their growth objectives are. It's also going to be based on who's the type of audience that they're trying to reach, right? So certain types of audiences are going to be more difficult to reach than others. It's going to be based on the customer lifetime value for the services that they're selling. All of that being said, there are industry benchmarks out there that firms are spending generally between 1.5 to 3% on their overall marketing spend. Again, some firms may need to go beyond that. Some firms may be on the lower end of that based on their current situation, where they're at in their phase of growth versus where they want to be in the future. But the more important thing is, what are they actually spending the money on, right? Is it effective spend? Is it helping them to meet kind of their long-term strategy and their long-term objective, where they want to go with the business and the practice?
Is email marketing and is email newsletter still very relevant? Do firm needs to have a very modern looking, intuitive websites?
So on the email, I mean, again, it comes down to data and performance. Does email still work? Sure, it does. But let's take a step back from that, right? You mentioned email newsletters. I am old enough to remember working in a firm that used to send out newsletters, like actual physical paper newsletters in the mail. And we were sending out like, I believe it was in the range of around 35,000 every quarter, right?
Yeah.
So there's a huge amount of investment that was there. So the important thing wasn't whether it was paper or it was being sent by email. The important thing was that we were keeping top of mind awareness with our audience. So our customers, our business networks, our referral sources, other folks that were out there, they were regularly seeing and hearing from us as to what was going on. And it demonstrated that we knew what we were talking about. It demonstrated that we were ahead of issues that were being faced by other people like them. Now, uh, is email and newsletter the answer? I mean, any firm can take a look at their open rates and their engagement rates and see, okay, is it still effective or not? The concept of that newsletter is what's important, which is, how are you regularly, proactively reaching out to your audience to keep top of mind with them? Now, we don't want to do anything that wastes their time. Like, I totally get that. And we want to be very careful about that, right? We want to be careful about anything that leaves a negative impression with the audience. However, we do want to make sure that we have those regular touches. And it's important for the health of our relationships that we're doing that on a somewhat regular basis, right? And again, every firm is different. They can decide what that frequency is. But think about whether it's an email newsletter, or maybe it's a recorded video message, or maybe it's something that's sent through other messaging platforms, or maybe it's something else entirely, right? Maybe you go back to snail mail, whatever the case may be, right? It's think about the purpose of that, which is how do I maintain that relationship and that awareness with my audience?
And the website?
The website, so in today's world, I mentioned everyone having 24/7 access to smartphones wherever they are. And so people will look you up, they'll look up your firm. And at the very least, you want to deliver a message that's consistent with how you want your reputation to be seen in the market. Uh, does that mean you have to have a massive website? Depends on your audience, depends on what you're trying to achieve, right? But you need to have something that people can see and they can say, yeah, I get who this firm is, I get what they do, I get that they work with people like me, and I'm interested in continuing this conversation with them. Right. So it's important, right? And you mentioned some of the social media platforms as well. Do you need to be on every single social media platform? You absolutely don't necessarily need to be active. Um, you do need to have maybe a bare level of presence so that when people look you up online, they find out that, okay, yeah, this is who they say they are. I see what they're talking about and they are legit. Um, but what's probably, again, more important is where is your audience? If your audience is active on LinkedIn, you now have a presence on LinkedIn. If your audience isn't on LinkedIn and they're on Instagram or TikTok or else, those are the platforms that you need to be active on, right? So it's different for every firm. There's no one size fits all answer, but it's driven
Quick
by
question. Yeah.
your audience. Yeah, sorry.
Quick question on thought leadership, because it's a personal service business.
Yeah.
Why why thought leadership is important, and what are the some key ways of doing that?
So this is a really interesting one because particularly in the consulting and advisory space, um, accounting and consulting and advisory firms were and still are amongst the world leaders in terms of thought leadership, right? Consulting firms exceptionally good at producing very well researched, very well thought out thought leadership that engaged with their audience and kept them top of mind, kept them positioned as the experts in their space. Some of the challenges now, particularly we're seeing with a lot of AI and things that people are just generating massive amounts of like spam content and things like that, is thought leadership still important? Yes, but you have to understand who your audience is. You have to understand all the different places that they can get that information from. So whereas before there was a lot of thought leadership that is what we would describe as being informational, just kind of answered a question around what is this or what is that. Now what we're seeing is actually more of an evolution that it's not just about answering those informational searches, it's also making sure that you're positioning yourself and your firm favorably for um, that whoever that audience is to take some type of action out of that, right? So that's an important evolution that we've seen over the last little while, right? And again, with the mass adoption of AI and the widespread use, it's so easy for people to churn out content, and you could argue the quality of that content as well. So I don't necessarily want to go down that stream, but I think again, there's still absolutely a place for that. It still helps with positioning, it helps with your reputation, but we're seeing that evolution with it.
Well, with that, I would like to conclude, but I think we need one more episode to go over a lot of other things. I mean, it's an endless
Yeah.
topic. I mean, I would like to talk about social media, the strategies on LinkedIn. I'd like to talk about, SEO, and how it would go in world, era of chat GPT, how AI can be used in marketing. So there is a lot of stuff out there which can be still discussed. But no, Apoorv, I think we are at the top of hour now, and we would probably do a part two of having you again conversate and talk more about it. But yeah, thank you for actually giving these insights, and I think it was very interactive, and we held on some of the things that would be very practical and hands-on for people to learn from or understand from. So yeah, thank you again, Apoorv. And lastly, would you like to share anything before we sign off?
Yeah, for sure. So, like you said, we could continue this conversation for a long time, and I always enjoy talking with you. You're someone that you understand business, you understand what accounting and tax and advisory firms, what they're thinking about, what's really going on in industry, and so we always have great conversations. So I
Yeah.
appreciate that. In terms of signing off, I shared a little bit about who I am and my firm. So my firm is Fixyr.com. Fixyr.com. And we help exclusively accounting and advisory firms that are struggling with their marketing. So if you're that firm, regardless of the size that you're at, we work with solopreneurs right up to firms that are in the hundreds of millions of dollars, and we can help to address your marketing and growth challenges. So I'll leave it at that. We could spend a lot more time talking about that, but I'll leave it at that. Anyone in your audience that's interested, feel free to check out our website. Feel free to reach out and connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to connect with you and hear from you. It's just first name and that last name, Apoorv Dwivedi at Fixyr Marketing. And if Shawn and his team, just let me know that you heard the podcast, or how Shawn, and would be happy to carry on the conversation from there.
Absolutely. Thank you, Apoorv, and thank you for sharing all the information.
Thanks again for having me here.